The Zephyrians' homeworld, Virilia, was a place of breathtaking beauty. Lush, blue-green forests stretched endlessly beneath twin suns, and the air shimmered softly with vibrant colors that seemed to hum with light. For centuries, the Zephyrians had lived in peace, their gentle civilization thriving on harmony and careful balance with their environment. Their cities, made of crystal and living wood, stood as quiet monuments to their wisdom and calm. But that peaceful world was dying. Deep beneath the planet's surface, a strange and growing disturbance had started to change everything. Giant tectonic plates shifted without warning. Great cracks split the earth, and invisible waves of energy pulsed through the land, disrupting all life. No one could understand what was happening. The scientists were baffled. The elders were afraid. As the days passed, the atmosphere grew unstable. Strange storms began to rage, and terrifying creatures from the planet's dark depths started to rise to the surface. The Zephyrians tried everything they knew: prayers, rituals, and experiments, but nothing worked. Their serene world was slipping through their fingers, and no help was coming. The Galactic Council, the body that governed the space around them, was distant and slow to act, wrapped in political debates and red tape. Time was running out, and desperation settled like a heavy cloud over Virilia. In a last-ditch effort, the Zephyrians decided to send out a distress signal, an SOS that would reach across the stars. The message was simple: help us. Our world is dying. But no one expected who would answer. The signal traveled silently through space, bouncing from satellite to satellite until it caught the attention of a fleet unlike any other: the humans. Known across many star systems as Deathworlders, humans had a reputation that caused many species to tremble. They were survivors of brutal worlds, hardened by endless wars, and feared for their fierce will to fight against any enemy and impossible odds. Yet, when the Zephyrians received news that the Deathworlders had picked up their SOS, some believed salvation had finally arrived. Others worried what such warriors would bring to their fragile planet. The Zephyrians had never faced anything close to the humans, beings whose bodies bore scars and whose eyes burned with a fierce determination. They wondered what it meant for their peaceful home to welcome such fierce guests. Meanwhile, the humans did not come in anger or conquest. Their fleet approached with a quiet but unstoppable energy, ships shaped like beasts, painted in dark metal and glowing blue lights, carrying thousands of soldiers and advanced machines. The human commanders reviewed the Zephyrian signal carefully. They saw a species in peril and a planet on the edge of collapse. For humans, this was a challenge and an opportunity to prove their strength, not by destruction, but by saving a world others had written off. As the humans closed in on Virilia, the Zephyrians watched from their cities, their curiosity mixed with fear. What would these Deathworlders do? How would their arrival change everything? No one could say. The signal they sent had brought them help, but it might also bring the end of the peaceful existence they once knew. Shadows lengthened across the forests, and the twin suns set, casting an eerie glow over a planet holding its breath, waiting for the storm that was about to arrive. The moment the first human ships appeared on the horizon of Virilia, the sky seemed to change. The twin suns cast long shadows over the forests, but now those shadows were joined by the silhouettes of enormous warships, vast and imposing, unlike anything the Zephyrians had ever seen. The humans had come without fanfare, without the usual diplomatic courtesies or formal announcements that the Zephyrians expected from other species. Their fleet moved with sharp precision and quiet power, as if they were predators silently closing in on their prey. But the question was, what prey? The Zephyrians watched with wide eyes from their crystal towers, their peaceful world trembling beneath the weight of the newcomers. From a distance, the humans appeared brutal and raw. Their ships were covered in dark metal, engraved with symbols that seemed both ancient and modern, and their engines hummed with a deep, steady rhythm like the heartbeat of a giant beast. As the ships entered Virilia's atmosphere, smaller craft broke off, streaking down like silver arrows towards the planet's surface. The Zephyrians could see the soldiers inside, figures in heavy armor, faces marked by scars and determination, carrying weapons unlike anything Virilia's gentle society had ever known. The first human landing was met with silence. No greetings, no loud proclamations. Instead, a single human commander stepped forward, his voice calm but firm as it echoed through the Zephyrians' communication networks. "We received your call for help. We are here to stop the threat that endangers your world." His words, simple and direct, sent a ripple through the fragile air. The Zephyrians had hoped for help, but this was not what they had imagined. The humans' tone carried the weight of battle-hardened experience, one that told of many wars fought and won, of harsh decisions made without hesitation. The Zephyrians, who had lived a lifetime of peace, suddenly felt their world shifting beneath them, as if their entire way of life was about to be uprooted. The humans wasted no time. Where the Zephyrians saw a delicate forest, the humans saw a battlefield to be prepared. They began constructing defenses, walls of metal and energy shields that crackled with power, trenches dug deep into the earth, and towers bristling with strange weapons. The transformation of the planet's surface was swift and ruthless. Crystal trees were cut down to make way for machine bunkers, and soft green fields were replaced by hard steel platforms. The Zephyrians were horrified. They had sent an SOS for help, but what they were witnessing seemed like an invasion. Some elders begged the humans to stop, to consider the beauty and balance of their world. But the humans responded with quiet resolve. "Survival is the only truth," the commander said. "Your world may be beautiful, but it will not survive without strength." Even as the humans prepared for battle, the cosmic threat that had plagued Viralia grew closer. From the dark reaches of space, monstrous creatures made of energy and shadow moved toward the planet. The Zephyrians watched helplessly as the first wave of the swarm descended, attacking everything in sight. The humans met them with fire and steel, fighting fiercely and without fear. The sounds of battle echoed across the planet: explosions, screams, the roar of machines. The Zephyrians saw things they had never imagined: brutal fights where humans fought not just with weapons, but with their bare hands, tearing through the shadow creatures with strength born of desperation. Slowly, the Zephyrians' fear began to change into something else: respect. They realized that these Deathworlders were not just merciless warriors, they were protectors who would not back down. The humans' ability to endure pain, to keep fighting even when the odds were against them, inspired the Zephyrians in a way they had never experienced. Yet, with every victory, the cost grew higher. The planet was scarred, its forests burned, and the peaceful cities had become battlegrounds. The Zephyrians wrestled with a terrible truth: their world would never be the same again. And still, the humans fought on, relentless and unyielding. As the battle raged, the Zephyrians began to understand the humans' way: harsh, sometimes cruel, but born from a desire to survive no matter what. The arrival of the Deathworlders had brought destruction, yes, but also hope, a chance for Viralia to live beyond the coming storm. The question now was if the Zephyrians could accept the price of that survival. The battle for Viralia was far from over, and the Zephyrians were beginning to see the true meaning of the Deathworlders' arrival, not as gentle saviors, but as harsh teachers of survival. The planet they once knew, with its calm forests and quiet skies, was now a place of relentless struggle. The humans moved with a fierce determination that left no room for weakness. They showed no mercy to the creeping dark energy creatures, smashing through them with weapons that fired beams of blinding light and machines that roared like beasts. But their greatest weapon was something the Zephyrians had never fully understood: the unbreakable will to fight, no matter the cost. The Zephyrians, watching from behind shattered crystal walls and ruined homes, felt a strange mix of fear and awe. Their delicate nature was challenged by the humans' brutal ways. The humans tore down sacred trees to build fortifications, flattened meadows to place cannons, and burned sections of forest to create clear fields of fire. To the Zephyrians, this destruction was almost worse than the enemy itself. Their protests were met with blunt words from the human commanders: "You must learn. This is how worlds survive." Slowly, the Zephyrians were drawn into the fight. The humans began to train them in combat, showing them how to wield weapons, how to move quietly, and how to think like hunters instead of pacifists. At first, the Zephyrians struggled. Their hands trembled, holding rifles. Their minds resisted the violence required. But as the dark energy creatures pressed harder, attacking villages and tearing through defenses, survival became a cruel teacher. One by one, the Zephyrians learned. They began to understand that their world would not be saved by hope or prayer alone, but by strength, strategy, and sometimes sacrifice. The humans, patient but firm, guided them with a rough kindness. There was no room for weakness, but there was respect for those who fought bravely. The Zephyrians' young warriors grew stronger, their eyes hardening as they faced death and destruction. The planet's forests echoed with gunfire and explosions, and the night sky was streaked with flashing lights from battles raging far from the cities. Every victory came at a price. Families lost loved ones, homes became ruins. The Zephyrians felt the weight of survival, heavy on their hearts. Yet the humans pushed forward, relentless as the dark creatures they fought. The commander who had first arrived stood at the center of this brutal transformation, reminding the Zephyrians that this was no time for hesitation or doubt. "Survival means change," he said. "Your world will never be the same, but it will live." The dark energy creatures adapted quickly, growing stronger and more cunning. The Zephyrians witnessed battles where humans charged fearlessly into waves of monsters, often paying with their lives. But their sacrifice slowed the enemy, buying time for others to escape and regroup. The Zephyrians began to understand that the human scars told stories of battles long past, wounds earned through countless struggles, not cruelty but endurance. As the days passed, a deep bond formed between the two species, not of friendship, but of shared struggle. The Zephyrians learned to embrace the harsh lessons of war, while the humans learned to respect the quiet strength hidden beneath their fragile appearance. When the next wave of dark creatures surged toward Virelia's core cities, the Zephyrians stood ready. The once peaceful beings fought side by side with the Deathworlders, using the weapons and tactics they had learned. In the heat of battle, the Zephyrians found something new, a fierce courage that surprised even themselves. They realized their SOS had not just called for help, it had awakened a warrior within them. The fight was brutal and long, the ground stained with fire and blood, but for the first time in many weeks, the Zephyrians tasted hope. The humans had shown them a way to survive the darkness, even if it meant losing a part of their old selves. And as the last of the dark creatures fell, silence returned to Virelia, not peace, but a tense calm, the kind born after a terrible storm. The planet was scarred deeply, and the Zephyrians knew the road ahead would be hard. But they also knew this: they had survived. The Deathworlders had come, not as gentle saviors, but as harsh teachers who demanded strength and courage in return for life. The lesson was clear: only those who fought with heart and will could call Virelia home again. And in that truth, the Zephyrians found the spark that might one day reignite their world. After the devastating battle, Virelia lay in ruins, scarred by fire, broken trees, and shattered cities. Yet, beneath the destruction, a new spirit was growing among its people. The Zephyrians, once fragile and gentle, were learning what it meant to survive not alone, but together. The humans, with their fierce determination and battle-hardened skills, had become more than just rescuers. They were teachers, comrades, and a living example of strength through unity. The air was thick with tension as the dark energy creatures continued their relentless assaults. But this time, the Zephyrians did not stand apart, watching helplessly from their shelters. They moved alongside the Deathworlders, shoulder to shoulder, sharing in the fight and in the pain. At first, their cooperation was uneasy. The Zephyrians struggled to trust the harsh methods of the humans, whose world was built on struggle and grit rather than peace and calm. The humans, in turn, had to learn patience with a species whose hearts were still tender, who mourned the loss of their home and the innocence they once held. Slowly, both species began to understand that survival was not about dominance, but about strength in unity. The Zephyrians took up the weapons the humans gave them, their fingers trembling at first, but growing steady with practice. Their minds, once filled only with thoughts of harmony, now learned to think like strategists, scouts, and warriors. They studied the humans' tactics, the quick decisions, the ruthless defense, the sacrifices made without hesitation. And they began to change. The humans watched this transformation with a rare kind of respect. They saw courage blossoming where once there had been fear, and in that courage, they found hope for Virilia. Battles continued to rage, the skies filled with the roar of engines and the crackle of energy weapons. But the combined forces were stronger than ever. Zephyrians and humans communicated through a mixture of languages, gestures, and a growing sense of trust. They shared stories of survival, each learning from the other. The Zephyrians taught the humans about the planet's hidden paths and ancient secrets, while the humans showed them how to build traps and weapons that could turn the tide of battle. One night, during a quiet lull in the fighting, the human commander gathered the leaders of both species around a flickering campfire. His voice was steady as he spoke about the future, about a Virilia that could be reborn from ashes, stronger and united. The Zephyrians listened, their eyes reflecting both fear and determination. They understood that the road ahead was long and uncertain, but for the first time, they did not face it alone. As the dark energy creatures launched a surprise attack on the northern border, the new alliance was tested. The Zephyrians, armed with human weapons and hardened by battle, fought fiercely alongside the Deathworlders. Together, they pushed back the shadows, their combined strength breaking the enemy's wave and sending them retreating into the darkness. That victory marked a turning point not just in the war, but in the hearts of the Zephyrians. They realized they were no longer fragile creatures clinging to a lost world. They were warriors, survivors who could stand tall in the face of any storm. The humans, too, felt the change. They were no longer just outsiders or conquerors, but part of a growing family bound by shared struggle and respect. Virilia's future was still uncertain, its forests scarred and cities broken, but its people had found something more precious than peace alone: unity through strength. And in that unity, there was hope that no darkness, no matter how fierce, could ever truly destroy their world. The war that had once threatened to tear Virilia apart finally began to fade into a fragile silence, leaving behind a planet forever changed and people forever altered by the horrors they had faced together. The dark energy creatures that had poured from the void, relentless and cruel, were pushed back, driven into the shadows by a force neither they nor anyone else had expected: an alliance forged between a gentle species and the brutal, unyielding humans known across the stars as Deathworlders. The battlefield lay quiet now, but the echoes of conflict still vibrated through the broken earth, cracked trees, and ruined cities. The Zephyrians emerged from their hiding places, their eyes heavy with grief, but also burning with a new, fierce hope. Their once fragile world was no longer the untouched paradise they had known, but a place where scars told stories of survival and sacrifice. The humans, battle-worn but undefeated, stood alongside them, their faces marked with the grime of war and the quiet pride of those who had fought not just to conquer, but to save. Together, they surveyed what was left of the land they had fought for, a land that would never be the same but was still theirs to rebuild. The Zephyrians, who once looked upon the humans with fear and suspicion, now saw them as protectors, though fierce and sometimes harsh. The humans had proven their loyalty through actions rather than words. Their presence was a reminder that survival was not about gentleness alone, but about strength, courage, and the will to stand firm even when everything seemed lost. As the dust settled, the leaders of both species met to discuss the future. The humans spoke of rebuilding not with destruction, but with new strength, sharing technology and knowledge that would help restore Virilia's forests and cities, but this time with defenses built to last against any threat. The Zephyrians listened and began to understand that survival meant change, a change that demanded balance between old ways and new strength. Some of the elders, still mourning the loss of their innocence, struggled to accept this harsh reality, while the younger generation embraced it, their eyes bright with determination. The Galactic Council, which had once been slow and indifferent, now took notice of Virilia's transformation. Reports of the Deathworlders' fierce defense and the Zephyrians' rapid growth and courage spread through the galaxy. The story of a fragile world saved by the relentless spirit of humanity became a legend whispered in distant star systems, a warning and a beacon. Meanwhile, the Zephyrians and humans worked side by side, not just to rebuild buildings, but to build trust, friendship, and a new society where both species could thrive. The humans taught the Zephyrians how to harness energy, build weapons, and train their bodies and minds for whatever challenges might come. In return, the Zephyrians shared their deep knowledge of the planet's ecosystems, guiding the restoration of life in ways that honored both the old and the new. Even as the scars of war remained visible, the world began to breathe again. Forests regrew, rivers cleared, and the skies, once darkened by battle, slowly returned to their brilliant blue. But the memory of what had happened never faded. The Zephyrians understood now that peace was fragile, and that true safety came not from isolation, but from strength and unity. The humans stayed on, not as conquerors or overlords, but as guardians and allies. Together, they stood watch over Virilia, ready to face any future threats with the hard-won courage born from their shared trials. In the quiet moments, when the sun set and the stars glittered above, the Zephyrians sent a message back into the cosmos, not a plea for help, but a declaration. It was a message of warning to those who might think to threaten their world, and a tribute to the Deathworlders who had arrived when hope was lost and turned the tide with their indomitable spirit. As the new dawn broke over a healing Virilia, a deep truth settled in the hearts of all who lived there. Survival was not just about living, it was about fighting for life with every ounce of strength and never giving up, no matter how dark the night. The planet and its people had been reborn, forged in the fires of war and tempered by unity, ready to face whatever the future might hold. And in that new dawn, the legend of the Deathworlders and the Zephyrians was written across the stars, a testament to the power of resilience, courage, and the unbreakable bond formed when two very different worlds choose to fight as one.